I feel it's really important for people to share their mystical experiences because we're entering into a time in life where we need these stories. We are ready for them. People are ready to share them, and we're ready to have conversations around these mystical experiences because they're always there. These mystical experiences have been existing, but they've been underground. And now it's time to bring it out into the open and to have these like regular conversations, because it's going to help people to recognize that there's so much truth in them. And when you align with your truth and you align with these conversations, you align with your soul and you start living a much clearer path in your life, and you start knowing more where to go, what to do, who to do it with, what to say. And you just feel like you're in a vibe, a vibration, an energy that just feels like it supports you, it holds you, and it carries you forward. We need to have these conversations as a community so that we can support each other on this journey and really start seeing more of what is available to us. So I really am looking forward to hearing you share your mystical experiences so that we can start having a conversation that really counts, that really matters, that is going to change the way we live in this world.
Sharing stories is to realign ourselves in this world, this time and space. You can teach others and teach yourself, exchange ideas, and also be mindful about why we are here in this world. So it helps us how to this intercultural exchange. We can learn from each other. So your experience, your legacy of ancestry, when you share with others, is so beautiful because you regain and you reinforce your identity in this world, your identity in this cosmos. So please share your story.
One of the ways that I learned a lot about who I am is by hearing your stories. Stories are such an important way of being able to channel our own hidden potential. In so many ways, you and I are holding back in ways that we don't want to, we shouldn't. We're holding back our fortune, we're holding back our future, we're holding back our potential. We might even be holding back love and peace of mind. But when you capture the experience from someone's story and it triggers one of those emotions, guess what? It comes to life. So I think right now we're in an age that listening to stories and sharing our stories is a way of teaching, but also of learning. So share your story.
The importance of sharing our spiritual experiences, those profound, magical, mystical experiences that we have, especially in connection with the natural realm. And I've learned of its importance for multiple reasons, but one of them is the more that we share it, the more that it moves from these hushed toned conversations, these one-off kinds of experiences, and it moves us deeper into the possibility. As humans, it's our birthright. We are wired energetically and physically, biologically, to be in deep relationship with all of the world around us, with other humans, with the natural realm. We are nature, and we're wired to have these experiences. And so the more that we talk about them, the more that we share them, the more commonplace they become. And that opens up the possibility for each of us to have those experiences, first of all, but to incorporate them into our lives in a greater way. And we're at a time in our evolution collectively that we need to be reminded. We need to be reminded of this interconnection and the force, the power, the possibilities that comes from that deep and profound connection and relationship with the world around us, all that's going on that is beyond that which we can see. It reminds us that we are these infinite beings embodied in these human forms. And the more that we move these conversations from those hushed tones and the being and the unbelievable into more of an integration into our everyday experience, into our experience as a human, it opens up possibilities and potentials for us individually and collectively. And we certainly can use more of that in the world today.
Ascension is our quest for wholeness, for completion, and ultimately for perfection. Now, when people hear about the word perfection, they think, oh, I could never be perfect, or, I know people who think they're perfect and I don't want to be like that. But actually, to be perfect means to be more whole, holy, complete, and compassionate. That's all the word means. And those are the keys to our ascension. Ascension is also about raising our frequency. We often talk in those terms, raising our vibration, raising our frequency. And there really is an elevation in the frequency. It's about activating our brain waves. It's about activating our heart waves. It's about transforming our bodies. So there is definitely a shift in vibration that goes along with that ascension. And ultimately, the purpose is to transform where we're at now. Often people think of ascension as a journey to another place. However, it's more about transforming Earth into a place that resembles more of the kingdom of heaven than it does presently. And so these are key aspects of ascension, is that we're trying to transform ourselves to make the world a better place. And all who are on that path are actually on the path of ascension.
Ancestors. Ancestors are our family or human condition in this world. In the original nations, we also think and we believe and we also feel ancestors are the mountains, the rivers, the valleys, the mother sea, the father sky, and all beings and all those sacred places and beautiful allies and elements, those deities that are around, they are also our ancestors. The lakes are the creeks, the beautiful lands where we were born, and also those beings, the caretakers and caregivers of sacred places, sacred spaces, sacred sites.
Angels are some of the most amazing and mysterious, mystical and sacred beings that we humans on Earth know about. Certainly, they have been the subject of legends and stories and religious texts for thousands of years. They seem to come in times of great travail, in times of grief or sadness, times of announcing a huge planetary change, like in the birth of Jesus or in the warning of the Great Flood. And they wind up being not only universal agents of the divine, but also personal guides, also beings who can work with us in our daily lives, who met with us before we ever came to this planet, who know what we intended to do with this lifetime, even though we seem to have amnesia and have forgotten, and who behind the scenes, never wanting to violate our free will, encourage us, support us, and help to orchestrate synchronistic events in our lives in order to open the path for us to go in the flow of Spirit's calling, to go in the flow of our own soul's joy and growth and happiness. So I think the angels are profound spiritual beings and really important for us to acknowledge. After all, most of us don't get an opportunity to see them very often, even though they may be with us all the time.
A question often asked of me is, what are spirit animals? Or another way to say it is animal spirit guides. And there's a pretty easy way to identify an animal spirit guide or spirit animal. That's when an animal comes to you in an unusual way or repeatedly, and especially in a short space of time. And that animal can be a physical animal that shows up to you. You're walking through the woods and a fox crosses your path right away, or you're sitting outside enjoying the sunlight and a crow lands right in front of you. Or you have a big dream. You wake up and you go, that was a big dream by a lion. So when an animal comes to you in that way, there's something pretty special that's happening. Very magical and mystical too at the same time. It's like Spirit's way of reaching you through a particular element of the natural world. And again, whether it's the physical or the symbolic animal, that animal has been brought to you to give you a message. So the trick or the art is discerning that message. Again, unusual and or repeatedly. That's what we're looking for. Now, the discernment of the message may require a little bit of an analysis. You might look at the features of the animal. You can search and find what are the characteristics of the animal, and you may find that there's a metaphor there that can be interpreted as a message. For instance, a fox crossing the path, for instance. And you go, wow, that was pretty, that's what Dr. Farmas talked about. I wonder what that's about. So you start thinking of the characteristics of the fox. Well, they're kind of in the background. You don't see them too frequently. They're really good at not really hiding themselves, but disguising themselves. So that perhaps could be interpreted as meaning that it's time for you to retreat, not to really be out there. That's a for instance. So it's a really amazing experience. Once you start to get your mind around this and your heart, you're going to find that you're going to get cues all over the place from different animals. Now, again, it's unusual, repeated and or repeated. Just close your eyes, bring in an image if possible of that animal, and send a question to that spirit animal and say, what's your message? Then the trick, or the art more accurately, it's not a trick, is then you pay attention to everything. As soon as you ask the question, what do you see in your mind's eye, or you're drawn to something in the external world? What do you hear in that inner voice? Or is there something coming from the outside? What do you sense in your body? The sensory, or what I call kinesthetic. And the other is there's just sometimes a knowing. That's cognitive. There's just a knowing. It's pretty close to intuition. But that's the way to move towards and make a goal towards doing this when you start working with animal spirit guides. And I gotta say, it's a lot of fun too. Really helps us on our life path.
In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word was with God. What does that mean? If you look at ancient stories and creation stories all around the world, you can see that there's an element in almost all of these creation stories about sound and vibration. Why is that? Well, just like in the beginning is the Word, what does that really mean? It means in the beginning was the sound, the vibration. We all come from sound and vibration. We all are sound and vibration. Even physical objects that you see in front of you, we have now been able to quantify and realize that on the subatomic level, everything vibrates. Even though you look like a solid being, even though my computer in front of me looks like a solid structure, on the subatomic level, it vibrates. But what's more is that we aren't even able to see the subtle vibrations. We have a limitation of perception when it comes to being able to see the vibration that is all around us. So we understand and we know that everything is vibration, but we also understand and know that we do not completely see everything as it really is. So the ancients knew about this. They knew that you and I were made out of frequencies and vibration. And not only did they create structures and ancient sites that utilize harmonics and frequencies in order to create profound structures, but they also created tools, vibrational tools that would help align and shift the individual to experience a state of harmony and peace. Original sound tools and instruments that were created on Earth weren't created specifically for entertainment purposes. The original sound tools were created in order to keep us aligned and on rhythm. When it came to the drum, the Tibetan bowl, the didgeridoo, if you look at all these ancient stories about these sound tools, you'll see that what they're actually doing with these tools are assisting the group in keeping in resonance and in harmony. So since this is the case, we are now rediscovering an ancient wisdom of sound and vibration that has been lost for so long. And as this happens, we're able to become more intentional with what we create, with the music that we create, with the structures that we create. And when we become more intentional about this, it really becomes sky is the limit. We can create many different experiences for individuals on Earth, create mystical experiences, but also create harmonious experiences that can assist the individual in transcending emotional blockages, traumas, not only from this life, but from past life, and also healing all types of physical ailments. This is what we have in store for us in the future.
An intensely self-transformational experience that is part of my shamanic journey took place in 1981 as an apprentice of my beloved mentor and master Don Celso Rojas Palomino in the northern coastal regions of Peru, in the Chongoyape River Valley in northern Peru, during the time of the Shining Path terrorist group, in which they had ravaged the country with their violent antics. So there was a curfew out at nighttime, and we weren't permitted to go out at night to harvest the sacred plant medicines necessary for our mesadas, for our ritual healing gatherings on Tuesday and Friday nights at Don Celso's very humble home. He was a sugarcane farmer and had a dirt floor adobe home where on Tuesday and Friday nights he would offer the community healing sessions that involve a ritual altar known as a mesa, or a ceremonial ground. So before that, we would go and harvest in the nighttime these plants that responded to the light of Mamaquilla, of Mother Moon. And in those days, the best plant medicine we could find was in this territory that was part of a military complex. So we'd have to sneak in through this barbed wire into pitch dark and go into this little rock outcropping where these beautiful San Pedrito cactuses were growing, and their white flowers were opening to the moon. And there's a precise time in which the medicine, the actual spirit of the plant, is so much more pronounced during that period of contact with the fullness of the moon. So we stealthily moved through this area knowing that there were military guards there, that if we were caught, we would be accused of being part of the Shining Path, and we would be either incarcerated for a long, long time or even accused as terrorists and shot on the spot. Yet my mentor, Don Celso, was very confident that through the blessings of the unseen world and his connection with his ancestral shamanic mentors, a field of protection and invisibility would be offered us. So we entered in. It was myself, Don Celso's son, and his son-in-law, which is also his two assistants, aside from myself, for these healing seances or sessions. Made our way in there and took our places where usually we used to go before this curfew was imposed. And we entered into a meditative state and created a field of protection around us and centered ourselves and stepped out of the way so that spirit could be present rather than just our human ego minds and individualities. So there was a collective force field that was anchored in that ground. And all of a sudden, I hear the barking of these dogs. And I hear the wheels of these big trucks approaching, and the voices of the military personnel. And I could feel, but not see, because I had my eyes closed. And Don Celso said, remain eyes closed, silent, dissolve, disappear, go beyond your breath. You are invisible. And we all complied. Yet the flashlights of these military personnel, I could see through my closed eyelids. And I could hear the sniffing of the dog in my ear, sniffing me. And I can hear the military walking right around us. And they said, and I heard them say in Spanish, no están, they're not here. Se deben haber ido al otro lado. They must have gone to the other place. And they packed up their things and they left. That experience made me realize how limited my understanding of reality was, and how this other dimensional space, time, hyperspace that's described is with us all the time. That the spirit world is not only a theoretical notion, but an actual experiential allowance, an experiential world that is available to anybody willing to let go of their conditioned sense of consensual reality. And aside from that, an impeccable trust in the guidance sourced from love of one of the greatest healers and shamanic mentors that I know exists in the world. This story transformed my life, or this experience transformed my life, and is one of others that progressively allowed me to do what I do now, which is just be a friendly holographic projection of your own beauty as healers in the world.
There are as many ascension experiences as there are stars in the night sky, and they are all individually specific and all very important. My first ascension experience, what I would call my first ascension experience, actually happened in the King's Chamber of the Great Pyramid. I had led a group on our tour group into the King's Chamber, which, as many know, is an ascension chamber. It's a resonance chamber made of red granite, right in the middle of the pyramid. And unsure exactly what to do on this first experience, I decided, like the rest of the group, that I would go into a quiet meditation. I closed my eyes and slid against the red granite wall and just got into a deep state of relaxation and kind of took inventory, started thinking, okay, here I am in the Great Pyramid, one of the most powerful buildings in the world. It's at the center of the land masses of the planet. And I just started sending love out to my friends and family. I visualized the earth just completely being bathed in waves of love emanating from my heart, magnified like a prism through the pyramid and waving out into the world. Well, suddenly this blue eye manifested in my consciousness out of nowhere. And I called it like this blue eye of bliss. And it was because it was just beaming bliss at me, and it was smiling at me. And in fact, there were two of them, and they were both almost identical, but they weren't the same being. I clearly associated the eye with a being, and also the second eye. And it was just like being bathed in just waves of bliss over and over again. And when we left the pyramid, I asked everyone, hey, did you all see that blue eye? And no one had any idea what I was talking about. And then finally, we got down to Luxor, and we went into we visited the Luxor temple, and then we went into the Luxor Museum. And there on the shelf was this 2-inch tall golden pyramid with the blue eye of Horus exactly placed on the exterior of the pyramid at the location of the King's Chamber. And I said, wait a minute, that's what I saw. That's the eye of bliss that I saw. And I realized at that moment that I must have connected with the consciousness of the pyramid. And the pyramid, of course, according to the ancient Egyptians, is a transmutation machine. It's an ascension device. And I realized at that moment, and this was around 2002, that likely I was going to be spending the rest of my life trying to comprehend that moment of bliss and that connection with the consciousness that I feel is responsible for building the pyramid, and ultimately is the consciousness that represents the path of ascension. So that started this path for me, and I've continued to try to unravel the mysteries of that experience, and have connected many dots as a result in the intervening couple of decades. And I'm thrilled to share that with others. And I know that people have had experiences like that or similar to it in future experiences inside the King's Chamber. We've had beings of light come walking out of the walls. We've had people that have, through chanting, have caused the pyramid to start vibrating, and everybody's starting to feel that elevated consciousness. So these are important experiences that all ultimately get in my bones and are still in my bones and keep me ringing or singing on this path of ascension. So I'm looking forward to hearing your experience as well.
I'll never forget this day in my life. There I was on a mountaintop in Mount Abu, India at the Brahma Kumaris. I was sitting on the floor with 2,500 yogis. And it was my first time. I just finished closing up the nightclub and being all out there in the world. And here I am in India looking to have an experience of God. And my heart was busting out of my chest as I sat in this room filled, waiting for this yogi to walk on the stage. She's known as Daddy Gulsa, the trance messenger of, invoking the energy of God's light in the Brahma Kumaris. And I sat there and my heart's beating because all my memories of stuff that I've done against my peace and purity, that it was coming up. And as I was about to step up and get out of that room saying, I can't do this, I'm not going to be able to do this, that energy entered that yogi's soul. And I don't know what it was, but the light and the warmth and the peace and the purity went like, and just sat me down. And I stayed still for 5 hours, just receiving whatever it was I needed to. That mystical experience brought me on my path, a path that I'm happy to have been living for almost 30 years. One experience has shaped the destiny of my life. I hope your mystical experiences will too.